Pete Buttigieg. He is running for on the Democratic ticket for state treasurer against Republican Richard Mourdock. Appreciate your time today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background for those who may not know you?
Sure. First of all, I'm old enough to vote. Sometimes people are asking me about that. So I'm 28 years old. I'm a businessman from northern Indiana. Grew up in South Bend and went to high school there, and then went to Harvard and studied American Studies there. Worked on a campaign and then joined the staff of the former U.S. Defense Secretary Bill Cohen. It was about that time that I won the Rhodes Scholarship and went to Oxford. Did a program there where I studied economics in detail, and that set me on the path toward what I'm doing now. So I came back to the Midwest, became a consultant, and spent most of my time in two areas. One was energy, a lot of time doing the math around the economics and the business side of climate change and coping with changes in the way our country is going to get our energy going forward. The other thing I did a lot of is economic stabilization. So I would go to distressed areas around the world and try to shore up the private sector. But the more I got into that kind of work, the more I started thinking if I was any good at economic stabilization, I could probably be contributing quite a bit in Indiana. And so started paying attention to the Treasurer's Office, one of these offices that a lot of people don't even know is there, but has a lot of power to help economically, and decided I guess late last year that this was worth looking into, and I've been a full-time candidate since March.
Mm-hmm. What exactly does the Indiana State Treasurer do?
So the State Treasurer is in charge of all of the money that belongs to us as a state. It's actually spread across 74 different funds, but the big ones are the General Fund, which is simply the if you want to think of it as the bank account of the state. That's really what it is. There's no large structure in Indianapolis, big white building with gold bars in the basement that represents the Treasury. The Treasury is a series of CDs and money markets and checking and savings accounts, the same way you or I would save our money. And the Treasurer is responsible for looking after that. There are also certain special funds. A good example would be the 529 College Fund, which families can use to save for college. Some of the pension funds are under the Treasurer, notably the State Police Pension Fund. And the Major Moves Fund, which was created by the deal to lease the toll road. The state got a lump sum in return for the rights to the toll road, and that lump sum is managed by the Treasurer. So the ultimate job of the Treasurer is to make sure that the state's money, about $7 billion of it on any given day, is being looked after well, is being kept safe, and is at the same time working in order to help us economically.
How are the different funds set up, just out of curiosity? Is it a fund management group that does it, or how does that kind of
Well, it depends on the fund, but a lot of them are managed by an external manager. That's something I think we need to take a look at. Often it makes sense. There's a lot of specialized knowledge, and there are a lot of firms that are capable and competent at that. At the same time, you've got to make sure that that firm is earning its fee, because they have to perform better than you would in order to justify the fee that they're getting. I'm not dogmatic about it. I think depending on the fund, often it does make sense to use external managers. I think what's important is that the Treasurer take responsibility for the policy that tells those managers what to do. And so in the Treasurer's office, you want to see a robust set of policies that set clear guidelines that then tell the manager what the goals are. And then it's up to the manager to do the details. You don't want to see the state treasurer necessarily picking stocks out on the computer, but you do want to know that there's a hand on the wheel in terms of making sure that we're on the right course.
In terms of oversight and things like that as
Exactly.
well. Would you be concerned about, you think about the volatility of the markets, it seems like it would be quite a bit to have one person maybe take that over. So you're suggesting look at the whole layout, and maybe some of it can stay, some of it can move back under.
Yeah, I think what we ought to ask is whether some of this could be managed by an in-house staff. So I see a lot of promise potentially in the idea of having some of the brightest students who come out of the very good programs that we have in Indiana for business and finance, and giving them an opportunity to work with some of the state's funds. Some states manage it more in-house, some states manage it more through firms. I just think everything ought to be on the table. We've had one party in charge of this office for literally my entire life, and some things we may be doing because it's the right thing to do, other things we may be doing just because we got used to it. And so I think we ought to take a real hard look and just do the numbers and see if it's still making sense to have things set up the way they are.
One of the things that you rolled out a few weeks ago, job creation program, I'll put the press release up. I didn't have it, but I'll put it up on the blog for anybody that would like to read it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure, I call it the Hoosier Capital Connector, but basically the idea is to make low-interest loans available to small businesses. It's patterned after some similar programs that seem very promising that I've seen undertaken in some other states. The basic idea is that if you are a small business and you can commit to a certain number of jobs you're going to create or retain, you would apply to my office for a loan for whatever it is you need in order to fund those jobs. Often an example would be that you want to open up a new location and you're looking for an affordable loan to allow you to expand. You'll come to my office with a proposal, and then I'm going to match you up with a community banking partner, one of the many banks that does business with the state of Indiana. They call it a linked deposit program because the idea is you're going to link the state's willingness to do business with a bank with the bank's willingness to provide a low-interest loan to the business. See, small businesses create about 2/3 of the new jobs in this country. And so my concern has been to visit, especially the high unemployment areas in Indiana, and there's a lot of them, too many. A lot of counties are seeing unemployment rates north of 10 and even 11%. Alarm bells used to go off when it was greater than 5 or 6. And so the idea is, how can we do something about that? Well, this plan is one example of how. Now, it's not spending any of the state's money. It's not a tax giveaway. It's not that style of economic development. The idea instead is that we have to deposit our money somewhere. So let's deposit it with a bank that commits to turn that money around and loan it to a small business. And then you'll provide, my office provides kind of a sweetener to the interest rate that the bank has to pay, knowing that they will also have a good interest rate, a better than normal interest rate for the small business that is lending for the bank.
So the taxpayers wouldn't actually be on the hook for the loans.
Exactly. The risk remains with the bank. So the bank still has to decide that it's a credit-worthy business. What we are doing is we're providing an incentive for the bank to then support jobs in that local economy.
Okay. Anything else about your job creation program, the Hoosier
Capital Connector. One of the other things is I really want to be open about the structure of the program. So there's no one size that fits all, and I think what we need to do is create an advisory panel as soon as I get into office and give ourselves about 3 months to figure out exactly what the right dimensions of the program would be. There are certain things that I've deliberately not laid out in advance. For example, how many jobs per dollar of credit that we make available are we going to insist on seeding? But whatever it is, we're going to have very clear accountability. So we're going to have regular reporting so that we know that those jobs actually are being created. Because one of the issues we've had with some economic development initiatives in the state is that jobs have been announced, maybe political credit has been taken for creating those jobs. Those jobs never actually materialized. I don't want this to be that kind of program.
How would you handle, we talk about job creation, and job creation isn't taking jobs from one location and moving them across the city to another.
Right.
How would that be addressed in this program? Would that be a consideration for a loan?
Yeah, I think, again, what you need to see with those loans is the ability to demonstrate that you're creating new jobs. I've also seen some programs that look at retention of jobs. You have to be very careful that you're not just paying a company to do what it already does, but a good example would be if a company is being bought and you need to help them find financing for a buyer that wants to keep that company and keep those jobs in Indiana. That would be a good example where you would want the state to put a thumb on the scale, if possible, in favor of keeping those jobs here rather than letting them flow somewhere else.
And it seems like I remember reading part of that also was you looked at the average wage. Was that part of this?
Yeah, you would want to be sure that these jobs were providing good wages. And one of the things we learned in this economic adjustment is that not all jobs are alike. And the last thing we want to do is facilitate trading good jobs for bad. And so I think one of the things we need to have taken into consideration is how well those jobs pay that are going to be created.
Do you also take into consideration benefits?
I think that should be on the table. It's exactly the sort of question I want to be open-minded about and put to a panel that we pull together of folks from the business community, the labor community, the finance community, and maybe the academic community as well, who can help us figure out exactly how to balance it.
Okay, to switch to your press release, the title was Show Hoosiers the Money. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think transparency is an issue that's come up in a lot of different ways in this campaign, and I think we need to do a better job as a state, and I'm thinking particularly about this office, of making it possible for people to find out where the state's money actually is. The money doesn't belong to the state, it belongs to us, it belongs to the people, it's our tax money. And I think it's very important that citizens be empowered to find out how that money is being managed. Now, not all states are alike, and some have been outstanding in terms of making that information available online. The web gives us the perfect tool to make this kind of transparency possible. It's cheap, it's easy, you just upload the information and there it is, and anybody who wants to know can find out. Right now, if you want to know any of the details of our state's investments, say you want to know what stocks the police pension fund is buying, or exactly what bonds are in the Major Moves Fund, you would have to go through a public information request process, kind of like an investigative journalist, where you file a report, or you file a request with the state. They'll send you eventually a big stack of paper along with a bill for the printout, and that's how transparency works. I think we can do much better because the internet's right there. It's easy to do. It's not costly, and I think it's the least we can do for citizens who want to know where their own money is being kept.
Because sometimes when you start following the money, if you get into budgets at all, you start looking at the appropriations and trying to match up with what you know was actually spent. The project was spent on or anything like that. Sometimes it does get a little confusing.
Yeah, that's right. And so at a minimum, we ought to put it out there. And I think we also ought to do more to clarify exactly what it means. Sometimes when you do file that request, you get back something that looks like gobbledygook. One example is I was able to get a listing of all the money that the Major Moves Fund has. And if you look closely, you'll see a good example is an investment that's CWMBS-04 or something. And if you do enough homework, you'll find out that that stands for a countrywide mortgage-backed security from the fiscal year 2004, tranche A, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And suddenly you're thinking, wow, I want to know that. That's important. That might be a problem. And so we really need to make sure that it's as easy as possible, not only to see what's out there, but to connect the dots and see what it means.
It's kind of the next evolutionary step for government, isn't it?
That's
Bringing
right.
this online and kind of using technology to help.
Yeah, because what it means is that so much less has to be mediated by the media. When it used to be that in order to find out any information, you either had to have enough time to launch a bunch of information requests, or that question that you wondered about the answer to, you had to be lucky enough that some reporter somewhere had that same question and found it out. Now I think we're able to enable individual citizens who just want to know something to go ahead and find it out, and they're not depending on some editorial decision somewhere, because it no longer takes the entire resources of a news organization to get some of this basic information out onto the public domain.
Anything else about your show Hoosiers the Money program?
I think you've got a sense of it. Again, I don't want to lock in exactly what it has to look like right now.
Sure.
Because I think this is an area where we should take advice from voters and from stakeholders. But I know at a minimum that it means much more frequent reporting than we have right now, and much more detailed reporting than we have right now. For a lot of these funds, the best you can get is a very high-level look once a year in a report that's actually put out not by the Treasurer but by the Auditor's Office. I think we can do much better. One of the things that really shocked me is to find out that Illinois is actually much more transparent. Now, I don't want to pick on our neighbors to the west, but anytime you're falling behind Illinois on any reform or ethics or transparency issue, I think that's a bit of a wake-up call that maybe we're not where we ought to be.
Sure.